And our guest today on Planetary Spirit is Dawn Carr, who is an international psychic medium, an intuitive consultant, a paranormal investigator, a certified hypnotherapist, as well as an author and peace activist. And as a true light worker, she strives to help people from all walks of life by bringing through messages of love and hope from those in spirit. And her website is www.angelsofdawn.net. That's www.angelsofdawn.net. And if you're enjoying this program and would like to download past interviews, go to our website at www.planetary-spirit.com for on-demand archives of our past shows. You know, one of the things that just comes to mind for me is that here you are, you're a woman, is the divine feminine and the divine feminine energies that are starting to emerge on our planet. Are you getting more spirit guidance from the feminine realm, or is there some energy that's coming in? Are you seeing any kind of shifting that's taking place as a result of emerging divine feminine energies?
It's actually pretty non-denominational, I got to be honest with you. It's always been in existence. It's just on Earth. We humans haven't allowed it to come through the way it is now, but because people are becoming more enlightened and more in tune with just being non-judgmental and allowing all types of positive energy in, the feminine concept is allowed to shine more. It's allowed to actually be acknowledged in human form more. But it's always been in existence. And I get input from both sides. I mean, a lot of people like to work with goddess energy and stuff like that, but I work with all positive energy. It doesn't matter where it comes from. As long as it's positive in nature, I'm good with it.
So like 100% divine light?
Yeah,
something
basically,
along those
yes,
lines.
yes. It's not. I'm not just working from one source. I'm working, well, obviously from God. And it's funny. I'd like to address that because it's everybody. In the past few weeks, I've been asked if I believe in God by many different people at events, and I find that humorous because I work through God, I work for God. You know, I was thinking about making a T-shirt up that said "Works for God." You know, I mean that's where all of the energy comes from. And so it is divine energy, and it comes from the divine, and they say God works in mysterious ways. Well, there's all kinds of spirit entity, there's all kinds of energy working for God, and I work for it all. As long as it's uplifting, I'm there.
Now, I understand you're also doing work with a film producer. It's a small independent film that you're working with on concerning ghosts and ghost energy and spirits. How is that? What is your part in that? And were there any interesting experiences that came up along the way?
Yeah, we've actually finished filming. We filmed in Massachusetts. We filmed in New Hampshire at buildings that were hundreds of years old. And my part, I was like the spirit liaison, basically. I identified any spirit activity and energy and explain any imprints in time that were still within the building, within the vicinity.
Define imprints, if you will.
An imprint is, some people call it residual haunting, but I really stay away from the word haunting because to me, spirits are spirits no matter what. But a residual or an imprint would be if you came in that door and sat there every day for 30 years, did the same thing, you would leave an imprint of energy on time. And 50 years from now or 100 years from now, someone might see your energy come in that door and sit down in that chair every day. It's like an imprint. And if you throw in something that was traumatic or something that had heavy energy, lower level energy, it would stay closer to the earth. So therefore, if you had, like one of the buildings we investigated with the paranormal investigations was a really old building. And at one time during the flu epidemic in the 1918s, it was used to quarantine people. And I could feel and I could see patients trying to get out. They didn't want to be there. And it was a heavy emotional imprint in time. And I could see children. It was mainly house children. And the children were trying to get out the door. And I just felt like I saw one child get out, and I felt like that the child was shot or captured or something, because they didn't want the illness to get out. I mean, they were trying to quarantine him. So that's an imprint. That was heavy enough and substantial enough to leave an imprint that I could see repeatedly over and over again at this location.
So that's almost like, I don't know, the word imprint seems to connote to me like an energy trail of sorts.
Yeah, exactly.
That somebody was doing something so much that it's almost like they carved this energy trail into that space, and it's almost like a little movie that plays over and over again.
Yes, exactly. And that's how you can tell people who do paranormal stuff, or people who say, oh, there's a haunting, or there's a ghost in my house. Look to see if it interacts with you. If it doesn't acknowledge you or interact with you in any way, it's probably an imprint. Because down at in Manament at this antique shop, we did filming. It used to be a church 200 plus years ago, and there's an imprint there of a funeral procession that comes through. And other people have seen it, and we had this film clip is on my website, of the woman, the mother of this child, being supported by two other people, and it starts at the front door, and it goes all the way through the back and out the back door, and other people, and as soon as I started describing it, someone else, the owner, actually said, oh my God, I've seen that, I see that all the time, other people have seen it, and that's why it's an imprint. It does the same thing over and over again. It doesn't acknowledge you, it doesn't interact with you, it's not real spirit, it's not a ghost, it's not spirit, it's an imprint of time.
Yeah, I saw that. I think on one of the trails on your website leads you to, at the way bottom of it, there's a film clip that you can download or watch. Right. And it's, I guess, a little bit from the film or the filming of what's being done. And, the owner says, oh, yeah, I've seen that. And I'm like, wow, that's wild. I mean, you're not even saying you're psychic,
I know.
What's that all about? But I guess after a while, people tend to believe what they're seeing, even though their logical sense doesn't really, want to say, oh, I'm looking at something I don't normally, acknowledge as having seen. Mm-hmm. So how did you find the way to allow yourself to open up to, kind of bringing these gifts that you have available? Did you at some point have to make a decision to say, okay, I'm going to be psychic, I'm just going to let this, kind of stream release through me, after a long time of kind of holding it back and not feeling that this was part of you?
I did, but what happened was my decision at the time was to only be psychic when I had to be. Like my friend calling me up and saying, I need your help, it's Parents' Weekend, so on and so. Okay, I can be psychic for those 4 hours. And if somebody called me up and said, well, could you do a reading for me? I could be psychic during that stretch of time. But I didn't want to be that way. I used my first name, Dawn, for the first 2 years because I didn't want people to know my last name. I didn't want people to know about me. Yeah. I was still acclimating myself because I still felt like people were going to point their fingers at me and go, who do you think you are? I didn't want to be that person. And so it did. It took a few years, and then finally I kind of went into it a little bit more and started incorporating it in my daily life. And then it's only been a few years, really, since I started using my full name and my picture. I didn't want my picture on my website or anything. I just, I figured if somebody wanted to talk to me about something or hire me for something, they could know me then. But in the meantime, I wanted to keep it low-key.
So this is a big step for you, then, to have your own website and to now be on internet radio and to really own, who you are and what you're doing.
It is, and as a matter of fact, I had a one-page website for 3 years, and that's it. I mean, you've seen my website now. Yeah. It's 10 pages. It's full of information.
Yeah,
I had a one-page website, and then I think it was a year and a half or so ago, my spirit guide said, okay, it's time to add pages to my website. And I said, really? And they were like, yeah. So I go, how many? They go, make it a 5-page website. So I did. And I was like, do I have enough information for 5 pages? I was like, yeah, we'll tell you what to put on. So I did. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I was all happy with myself. And then it was like a couple of months later, they go, okay, it's time to add 5 more pages. And I went, you want me to make it a 10-page website? And they're like, for now, see, as they're telling me this, as I'm telling you this, they're telling me to tell you that it's going to be more. It's going to be 15 pages soon.
God, that's good.
But I just was like, and then now you see it's 10 pages, but it's 10 full pages.
Oh,
I mean,
it is.
And I like it because the first part is the business stuff, the part that people go onto your site for. And then the last half is just fun stuff. It's articles, photos, it's book recommendations. I like to get the word out. I mean, yeah, I'm in the business and I have to support myself and my family, but I'm also here to spread the word and bring uplifting energy to people. And I'm trying to teach people that you can help yourselves as well, you know? I mean, everyone needs spiritual guidance. I need spiritual guidance, but you also have that energy within you to uplift your own energy, and it's just a matter of learning how to do it. And that's one of the things that I'm working on now, is getting the word out and teaching people how to start small and then evolve from there.
Well, that's one of the things I like about your website, too, other than the fact that you use a lot of music in your
I love
website.
The music.
But it also has kind of a playful feel to it.
Yeah, and that's my personality, because this is what, it's my husband, he's always commenting, he's like, I went on your website the other day, it was pretty cool, and I was like, oh yeah, I haven't shown you since I updated it last, but I tell him, well, you know, it has to represent me when I can't represent myself. Mm-hmm. So if somebody's on the internet at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they want to know who I am, bang, you're on my website, mm-hmm. This is me, mm-hmm. I don't hide, I'm not pretentious, it's me.
Mm-hmm. Now, how... different people will perceive energy in different ways. I mean, basically, it's like clairaudience is,
mm-hmm. Hearing.
More psychic hearing,
mm-hmm.
or seeing would be clairvoyant.
Yes.
Or then there's also feeling.
Clairsentience. Claircognizance.
Cognizance would be.
There's all kinds.
Thinking.
Well, that would be feeling as well. Clairsentient will be feeling. Claircognizance is just knowing, like you just know.
Right. So, how does the awareness come through for you? Are there one or more?
That's the number one question that people ask me everywhere, and I say all of the above. And sometimes I hear them. Sometimes I see them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I see them, but I don't hear them. So you know what they do? They show me subtitles. If they want something to stand out, they make it in neon, like a flashing neon sign. If they want me to know something, they'll have me taste something. One time I was doing a group event, and I was channeling this older woman who had passed, and I kept tasting. All of a sudden, I tasted lobster. I'm like, oh my God, all I can taste is lobster. And they're like, oh my God, we used to go out for lobster every Sunday afternoon. So that's another way they get their point across. Sometimes and I ask them, if you're going to do this, only make it minuscule. If someone has passed from a stroke, they might numb my side of my face for a second. Or I had an interesting one a couple of months ago I'd never had before, somebody who passed from an aneurysm, and I felt it on the top of my head. And I was like, as soon as if I don't acknowledge it, they'll make me feel it until I acknowledge it.
Wow.
So all of the above, really. I mean, I can't explain it. All I know is that they just try to get their information through any way that they can. Sure.
And as far as the realms that you're dealing with, are you primarily on like the earth plane? Are you dealing with the angelic realm? Do you work with the fairy energies? Are you working with celestial energies, alien energies? I mean, who's tapping in through you?
I don't think I've ever worked with alien energy. I don't acknowledge it. Well, it's not that I don't acknowledge it. It's just that I've never been really exposed to it. So, I don't know.
That's not a big one on your playlist.
Yeah, I don't know what it feels like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. Angelic energy, always. I see angels all the time. As a matter of fact, this is an interesting story. A few years ago, I have some crystals on a counter in my house. And before I do readings, sometimes I kind of hold my hands over the crystals and recharge myself. And I was doing that, and I opened my eyes, and there was this being of light, it looked like angelic, but I wasn't sure. It was just like this being of light floating above me with like a bucket in its hand. And everything was like white glowing light, and I was just like, I went, hi, how are you? I didn't know what to say. And it just looked at me and smiled and didn't say anything. And I just kind of got the feeling that I was supposed to bow my head, and when I bowed my head, it poured whatever was in the bucket over the top of my head, and it was awesome. It was like all of a sudden this peaceful relaxation just went from the top of my head, went all the way through my being. And then afterward I looked and I said, thank you so much. That was awesome. And they nodded and disappeared. And I talked to a couple of my friends. I go, have you ever heard of this before? And they were like, no. And so I went on some chat groups online, and they were like, no, but you know what? Somebody mentioned Doreen Virtue, who I had never really heard of at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, she writes about angels all the time. Why don't you check out some of her books and see if she has? So I was led to one of her books that was like an encyclopedia of angels. So I go through, starting, they're all alphabetical, A, B, C, and I'm reading, and I'm like, no, none of these describe what happened to me. Finally, I get to the U's. Uriel, Archangel Uriel, goes around with a bucket full of light and pours light into all situations. And I was like, bingo, that's the one. It took me the whole alphabet to get to the end.
Wow.
But ever since then, I see Uriel on a regular basis. And I know angels are supposed to kind of be androgynous. I always tell them that he's the prettiest angel I've ever seen, because Archangel Michael is like this big hulking guy, and Uriel is just pretty, So yeah, I work with angelic energy and all kinds of good stuff.
And nothing wrong with beauty.